Today, we're talking about Point Pleasant's infamous Mothman in this mind-bending exploration of it having extraterrestrial origins. We will examine compelling case research suggesting that Mothman might be a survivor of a UFO crash, stranded on Earth, and struggling to survive. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Mysteries with a History, where you'll be taken on a wild ride into the unknown, the strange, and the mysterious. Like you, I have questions, and like you, I want answers. And with each episode together, we will peel away the layers to look for the truth. I'm very excited for this episode for several reasons. One, and two, Jimmy is doing this show today on his birthday. Let's bring him in. Jimmy, happy Thursday and happy birthday.
It's my birthday? Really?
I'm pretty sure.
Is it today? Is it today? All right. Thank you for that, Cristina. What was that mug that you held up?
It's my Mothman mug.
Oh, very cool. You did it so fast. I didn't get a chance. I'm 1 year older. I don't have the vision I had, in years gone past. But yeah, very cool. Very cool subject for the show. Yes, it's my birthday, everybody. Thank you for all the birthday wishes there in the chat. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Very cool. In the world of social media, Cristina, and we saw this start to unfold maybe 10, 15 years ago. Social media sends out notifications for people it's so-and-so's birthday. And keeping up with that, and I just love it. I love it. And I am trying to track all of it. But having everybody take the time to wish me happy birthday means a lot. It's very, very cool. I'm 61, everybody. 61. Doesn't feel, you know what I did today when I rode my Harley? I rode it like a 61-year-old.
Did you go 61 miles per hour?
No. It was so funny. I was just thinking about, the day and everything, and what's, everything that's planned and stuff and what I'm working on. And I was just enjoying the moment. And I just caught myself driving like an old man that I swore I would never do. The bike is set up to race, right? Got racing tires, got racing transmission, got a racing motor. That's from Blues Brothers, by the way. Anyway, so that's what it's set up to do. It's not set up to, no. That's what it's set up to do. And I didn't do that today. And I just kind of laughed. I held up traffic a little bit and was just kind of enjoying the moment. So anyway, Mothman and UFOs. And is Mothman okay, now, are we being gender specific here? Mothman. Shouldn't we be saying moth person?
In the day and age that we live in, it has to be like that way, it seems like. But we're going to stick to Mothman because that's just the name it's been since the beginning.
But how do we know? 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 How do we know that Mothman wasn't sitting on a nest of eggs? How do well, okay, so putting that part aside, Mothman being a survivor of a UFO landing or crash is a pretty interesting take. And let's get into this. I'm wondering how you've got some things that are tied in. I've got some stuff too that I want to present on this idea. So let's go. Where do you want to start?
First, I want to start off with, if you've ever had a Mothman sighting, a UFO sighting, or anything strange and mysterious, come to my Discord. It has almost 4,000 members where you meet with so many other like-minded people. I know one of my mods will place that link in the description box below. But there, it's a safe place to where you can share your very strange and unique experiences. And maybe, just maybe, you've seen the Mothman rather recently, because there have been some modern sightings of Mothman. 2017 was a big one. But I think we need to set a foundation for the story of Mothman. What happened back in 1966? Who saw it? Who was researching? Where did it take place? Right? All of these different things we have to cover before we get into the UFO phenomenon part. Don't you agree, Jimmy?
I do. I do. It's a mix though. It's a mix. So before we move forward, I'll just say this: when we look at the supernatural and the paranormal and cryptos and ET and sightings and close encounters of the third kind, fourth kind, and all of that. When you analyze that and start to break it down, the connections between all of this phenomena are right there. They're right in front of you. So to suggest that there isn't a connection or couldn't be a connection between Mothman and UFO sightings or ET or contact, I think that's a very close-minded approach to this. And that includes Bigfoot, that includes ghosts or apparitions or entities, interdimensional stuff that may be going on. And we'll get into that. But it's just for me, it answers so many different questions all at the same time. And I've got ideas for it. And the reason why I think like I do today is because of the experiences that I've gone through. Not necessarily stuff that I've read or stuff that I've seen or in books and so forth. No, I'm talking about my own experiences, Christina. This stuff all seems to me to be related and connected. So to suggest that Mothman could be connected to UFO sightings and possibly a survivor of a UFO crash or a retrieval or a landing is right there. I'm cool with it.
Well, I got to ask you this actually before we just one more thing. You just laid down your age. Men can do that, but somehow women can't. Either way, when you
What?
were a when you were a kid, did you
Yeah.
hear about Mothman and like when this whole thing was taking place, or was it kind of more of a modern research topic? When I say modern, I'm guessing in the last 20 years.
It's kind of man, I don't want to do a cop out here and say it's a mix of both. But John Keel's book came out in 1975. Prior to 1975, you had to be really into the subject and reading magazines or periodicals. You got to remember there was no internet and there wasn't any movies being made or anything like that on this subject. But the sightings themselves, because how are you going to go and research this with the local Point Pleasant newspapers and the sightings that were going on? You can go to your library and get microfilm. You know, how would you do that? And now there were a few mentions of it that kind of got out, kind of went national, and so forth. But it wasn't until 1975, Christina, with John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies. John Keel, great writer, and touched upon all aspects of these subjects. But not until 1975 did this, because he was such a successful writer and so well read, and widely read, it never really reached the public until 1975. And that's kind of where the conversation started in a mass scale.
Right. And then from there was no putting the toothpaste back in the tube, as they say, which has kind of become my favorite metaphor at this point in time because it's so funny. But let's talk a little bit about the background of Mothman. And Jimmy, it's your birthday, so I'm going to let you take this one away.
Well, we can start with what everybody knows, which is the basic stuff here that November 15th, we're coming up on the anniversary. Today is October 10th. It was November 15th, 1966, where you had two young couples hanging out doing what couples do. Okay. So, and it was Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Millette. And they freaked out, went to the police, told the police that they had seen a large black creature with glowing red eyes standing at the side of the road near the TNT area. The TNT area being this weapons depot area just north and east of Point Pleasant up the road a stretch. But, you know, the TNT area where kids hang out, couples hang out, makes sense. And this was the site of an old World War II munitions plant. Now, Linda Scarberry said that it was a slender, muscular man, described him being almost 7 feet tall and white wings. Very interesting. She said that she never saw his face and was kind of hypnotized, by the way. She was hypnotized. She and everybody else jumped in their car and sped back to Point Pleasant. And they said that the creature flew after their car, and they watched him flying after their car, and that it was screeching while it was above their car. A very terrifying sound coming out of it, and went all the way south to the Point Pleasant city limits, and then they pulled off. Now, other sightings over the next few days, as the story broke out, you had 2 volunteer firemen who saw it and said that it was a large bird with red eyes. And then a local contractor there, his name is Newell Partridge, he said that he aimed a flashlight at a creature in a nearby field and saying that the eyes glowed like bicycle reflectors. That's pretty interesting. Now, following the December 15th, 1967, remember, this is November 1966. So now a year later, a year and a month later, December 15th, 1967, collapse of the Silver Bridge and the death of 46 people. And then everybody started to maybe question premonition, precog. Was it precognition? Were the sightings of Mothman tied to the bridge collapse? It's a very interesting take on this. And of course, you have John Keel coming in and doing his investigation and his 1975 book that I mentioned earlier, The Mothman Prophecies. And in that book, Cristina, he says, and I've read the book so many times now, that the Point Pleasant residents experienced precog and premonitions of the collapse of the Silver Bridge, but also they had UFO sightings and they had interdimensional visitations, and that it was some of the first mentions of the Men in Black, right, showing up in Point Pleasant. So you had all of this. Now I'll get into other ideas about what were going on at the time and what could be influencing all of this, but I'll hand it back to you now. But that's the overarching setup for Mothman in 1966.
There were a lot of witnesses that saw this creature entity, not just in Point Pleasant, but in surrounding towns as well. And one of the most significant things about this sighting was not just these couples seeing it or being chased by it, which is significant enough, but Jimmy, as you had mentioned, it was the collapse of the Silver Bridge, December 15th, 1967. And 46 people died. Only 44 bodies were recovered. In the book by Lauren Coleman, he actually has the the list of the people that have passed and where they were from. When I was reading this book, something that I found very odd is that of the 44 people that were found, they were coming from Ohio and West Virginia, but not all of them were Point Pleasant local. The 2 bodies that weren't recovered were from Point Pleasant. I don't know what that means. I'm putting it out there because this is one of the very, very few books. It's called Mothman and Other Curious Encounters. It's one of the very few books that actually lists all the people that had passed away. And something that has been thrown around a lot is this idea that maybe Point Pleasant was this very unique location for the government, the CIA, and who knows whatever else to run tests. And so there are these ideas that maybe Mothman was some kind of test. These UFO sightings in the area were tests as well. There were military installations there where it was like a plant for ammunition. All of these different things, you're creating this hodgepodge of mess, or in this case, a conspiracy theory of what was actually going on in this very small town in West Virginia. This sighting was so significant. They now have a Mothman festival, and they got this ginormous statue of the Mothman. It happens every single year. Everyone's always taking pictures next to it. But it made such an impact on this town that they remember it every single year with their festival.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And something deeply rooted has continued there over the years. And so if you back up and look at the types of sightings, who was sighting, and the hysteria that happened around this, was there another external cause for this? Was Mothman real? Like a physical situation? Was Mothman possibly something else that we suggest a lot now, which is something interdimensional, and that could very well play into this? And John Keel himself, now I've got a quote from John Keel, and I want everybody to listen to this because it now leads into another word that we're going to get into. But this is a quote. He says, quote, "I abandoned the extraterrestrial hypothesis, ET, in 1967 when my own field investigations disclosed an astonishing overlap between psychic phenomena and UFOs. The objects and the apparitions do not necessarily originate on another planet and may not even exist as permanent constructions of matter. It is more likely that we see what we want to see and we interpret such visions according to our contemporary beliefs." It's an interesting take, right? Now, interdimensional, which is where he's going with this, is another application. This is what John Keel suggested. And it's a very, very interesting take on everything. That doesn't mean that people weren't seeing things and experiencing things. It's what were they seeing and what were they experiencing? Because the interdimensional hypothesis, which I do apply not only to ships and some things that I see in the sky, but also, possibly Bigfoot and ghost and Slender Man, right? These ideas of black entities and things that look humanoid. Well, the interdimensional hypothesis may be, Cristina, that the Mothman sightings are the result of experiencing other dimensions that are created by ET. Okay? Now, so if we take that idea, and UFO sightings have been happening in Point Pleasant, other parts of the country, right? And what are the phenomena that are happening in and around or upon the same time, right? So if these are interdimensional beings like Mothman, created by ET and or ultra terrestrials. Now, this term brought forth by John Keel, which was immediately locked onto by others, including Jacques Vallée, starting to talk about this, that ultra terrestrials, ET, which is an interdimensional situation, but we see it as reality, right? This is something that comes out of another dimension and into ours. Now, is it a physical situation? Could be, but we perceive it as physical, and then it leaves our dimension. This is something that we experience as our own reality, which is in contrast, if you think about it, with either the extraterrestrial hypothesis that suggests that UFO sightings are caused by visitations from outside the earth, right? You have that part. And it is in direct contrast with things that people would suggest other excuses or debunking or being a skeptic in any way. It contrasts all of that. So I'm okay with going into this part of the story because there were a lot of UFO sightings. I want to go through your list. There was that. There was a lot of Mothman sightings, and then there was everything else that went along with it. You have UFOs, you have ET, you have ghosts, you have different aspects of things being seen in the sky, on the ground, and different physical descriptions of these beings. Right, so it's very strange. So let's go with UFO sightings around that time. What's our list?
Yes, I will go ahead and pull that up for you. Something else that's just very strange about the time period. This took place in 66, 67. There was a lot of strangeness happening during that time frame. And then just adding Mothman into the mix, it obviously is catching people's attention. But looking at the UFO connection, before we get into some more witnesses that I'd like to mention in just a little bit, there were statements that were collected mainly by Keel because he was the main investigator who went to Point Pleasant several times in a 13-month period, just interviewing what he said hundreds of witnesses, people on the street, just to get a better grasp of what they were seeing, what they were experiencing as well. And then he was able to create his book, Mothman Prophecies. But something that he brought up when researching and talking to witnesses was this electromagnetic disturbances, because both Mothman and UFO sightings were often accompanied by reports of electromagnetic interferences, such as car engines failing or even radio static. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. But in November of 1966, just days after the initial Mothman sighting, multiple witnesses reported seeing a large, bright lit object hovering over the TNT area and the same location where Mothman was first spotted. And that TNT area was where the military held their ammunition plant. Then in December, so you got November, and then December of 1966, a group of hunters claimed to have seen a UFO land in a nearby field next to Point Pleasant. And they described the object as being disc shaped and emitting a bright light. Then, a month after that, in January of 1967, a woman reported seeing a cigar shaped UFO flying low over her house in Point Pleasant. These are just a few of many, but we're seeing one back to back to back of these Mothman sightings and these very strange UFO sightings, these craft in the sky that are emitting this very, very bright light, from just your everyday witnesses to hunters to a house owner. All of these different people are seeing very similar things. But there was also a strange sighting March 31st, 1967, where a workman at a local lumber yard reported seeing a glowing object hovering over Mrs. Doris Deweezy's home. And soon after, Mrs. Doris herself witnessed a luminous object flying across the sky before crashing into a small shack on a nearby hill. And this shack, which housed Sheriff Johnson's police radio transmitter, subsequently, this is very odd, caught fire. And so then the ensuring rescue operation was chaotic, with police and firefighters struggling to reach the site due to the snowy and muddy conditions. And although the transmitter inside the shack wasn't directly affected by the fire, it was mysteriously burned out as if struck by lightning, leaving the sheriff's department without its main communication device during this very critical time period. But as the Mothman incidents continued, the TNT area became crowded with curious people trying to see a UFO, maybe even see Mothman, which really prompted John Keel to seek a quieter location for his observations. And then his attention turned to the Gallipolis Ferry. I don't think I said that right, but we're going to continue, which is a small
Galapagos.
community.
Galap-
Galapagos?
uh,
I think
Galapagos.
I think it's Galapagos, yeah.
Galapagos. Those are the islands down near
No, that's
Argentina.
Galapagos.
Yeah, Galapagos. Same thing. I'm from the Midwest, man. I was born in a trailer park. What? Okay, so but this is, let me ask you a question, because when we look at all of these things, Christina, if you see somebody crossing the street,
Mhm.
if you see a physical, right, you see a person crossing the street, or you see Mothman flying in the sky, and it's real. right? And you see the person across the street, you see Mothman in the sky. And wow, right? So you've had this experience. And then somebody comes up to you and says, they weren't real. They were manifestations. They were created for you. Well, does that change the experience? No. You saw what you saw. Do you
Right.
understand?
Right.
And so your experience, your memory, and everything else is a real one. It just because you're looking at a hologram or something interdimensional, that something may not be as physical as you think it is, but it's still your experience. You saw it. And all of these sightings that were happening, not only with Mothman, but everything else around the paranormal and the supernatural that was going on at this time, it doesn't change the experiences. Could it be that it was an ultra terrestrial creating an interdimensional being for people to see? Now the question is why? Why would they do that? What's the purpose of that? Is that tied into knowing the future? Right? Where we now in this, this precog situation with the collapse of the Silver Bridge? Is that part of it? I don't know. And why would that be tied into it? To alert people, to get people's awareness elevated, possibly. I'm not so sure, but we had the same thing, allegedly. I'm just going to say allegedly, but that in Russia in 1999, they had the apartment bombings that went on there, and there were reports leading up. Nobody knew that the apartment bombings were going to happen, and it was tragic. That was a very tragic event. But there were Mothman sightings, a lot of them in Moscow the previous year before the apartment bombing. So some would suggest it was exactly like Point Pleasant. So what is the reason for it, and why would this happen? I haven't gone into UFO sightings in the Moscow area in 1999 and 1998, and where they tied in with the Mothman sightings, but the facts of the case are there. The Mothman sightings preceded the 1999 apartment bombings in Moscow. It's very interesting.
That is and not something that I actually caught in my research, so I'm really glad that you're here to give us that information. And
It's my
when
birthday.
we
It's my gift. It's my gift.
that is so kind of you. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
But looking at these Mothman sightings, there was always this after the bridge collapsed in Point Pleasant, there was this instant connection of it's a bad omen if you were to see Mothman. Something bad's going to happen. You're going to get these as Keel cited in his book, it's going to be these prophecies. Things are going to be coming right after. And so when we look at these sightings and these encounters that took place in Moscow, and then coupling it with the ones that took place in Point Pleasant in 1967, it's hard not to see the pattern here. But there was a long period of time, well, not that long, depending on where you're looking in the world, but there was a decent period of time where Mothman was no longer seen. You had this just consistent sightings in 66 and 67. Then it kind of died out in West Virginia for some time. There have been other sightings across the world, but they've all been given different names. And we can just things like the Jersey Devil, Bat Squatch, which is always funny to me, and
Mhm.
a few others. And then people can just label them all as the Mothman or all as whatever you want to call it. But here is where I want to bring in the extraterrestrial hypothesis and something that I've thought about a lot when anyone has ever mentioned Mothman. And I think to myself, it came out of nowhere and it almost left out of thin air. It's this entity that looks so bizarre, truly so alien, where you have this humanoid type body. You have these moth like wings, maybe antennas, but we don't really know about that. ferociously ginormous, red, piercing eyes that are just glowing. What if, Jimmy? Just bear with me, muse with me just for a moment. What if, just like how we have here on Earth, zoos, where we collect animals from all parts of the world, what if extraterrestrials do the exact same thing, but they collect them from different planets? And maybe, just maybe, this Mothman was a little too smart for these guys, and he or she, I don't know, casually got out of the spacecraft
Escape.
and then
He
landed
escaped.
on Earth by accident.
Yeah. Makes sense. Oh, look, you go to another planet, right? And you visit and you overhear a family, right? And you're looking through their window into their living room, mom and dad, a couple of kids. Dad picks up the phone, is calling the neighbors. Hey, you want to come over and check out our new humans? Right? We've got them in the back. Oh, they have some at the zoo? You've already seen. Oh, okay. All right. And think about that for a second, because isn't that what we do? You want to come over and
Well,
see my new kittens? Right? You
it's
want to
kind
come
of
over?
like the scenario of the movie E.T. It's that same kind of vibe where maybe this
100%.
entity escaped or following the E.T. movie,
100%.
maybe.
100%. 100%. 100%. And always remember, to ET, we are the aliens. That's it. We are the aliens. So that the zoo hypothesis is a strong one, man. That's a strong one. Now, I'm going to flip this over a little bit because I have a strange connection to all of this. Okay. And this needs to be mentioned. In 1974 in Indianapolis, it was in the summer going into the fall. The leaves had started to fall off the trees, but it was right in that time period for 3 or 4 months where we had these Thunderbird sightings. Okay. And so there was film, photographs, sightings. It's on the news, it's in the newspaper, it was everywhere. And so, just like those kids going out to the TNT site, right, north of Point Pleasant, suddenly me and my friends are talking about Thunderbirds. Let's go see if we can find the Thunderbirds. And we're going out with our binoculars and trudging through the cornfields and looking for trees and going out and hoping to catch a sight of these Thunderbirds. Now, there is a connection, right? What if the sightings that were going on, and there was hysteria around this, by the way, there's plenty of stuff that you can go and research on this. What if what people were seeing, and they were describing these giant birds with 10 and 15-foot wingspans, right? Okay. What if they were seeing Mothman? Think about that for a second. And what if you flip that back around? What if it was Thunderbirds, again, just as fascinating of a story? What if it was Thunderbirds that they were seeing in Point Pleasant? A pterodactyl, right? Why don't we see ghosts of Neanderthal? Well, maybe this is an example of that. Maybe we're seeing something interdimensional from the past or from the future, and it's a ginormous flying creature. We see it as Mothman. Others see it as Thunderbirds. Some see it as a prehistoric creature or a pterodactyl. All of these come into play. But I went through that hysteria personally in 1974, and I was 10 years old, and it was exciting. Everybody was talking about it. The whole neighborhood was going out and walking through the cornfields looking for Thunderbirds, like everybody. So I understand how the hysteria can grab hold of a community.
Oh, or maybe this Mothman creature was left behind. But then again, did a UFO crash in the area of Point Pleasant? Was the wreckage picked up by the military based off of the witness story that I mentioned not too long ago? And it's like we've seen in a bunch of movies, these like grisly, kind of creepy aliens getting left behind to cause mayhem. And obviously, we don't have all the answers, but sometimes we just have to, from time to time, think outside of the box. Did Mothman, was he, she, whatever, created here? Maybe in a lab or through just natural evolution? Was it dropped here? Did it escape? Was it left behind? I think we need to consider all those different things and then also look at other cases from around the world where they have seen similar humanoid type entities with the biggest wings you could ever imagine flying around, causing mayhem, or maybe even just minding their own business, and witnesses just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And if you agree with any of those theories or you have some of your own, I'd like to hear them in the live chat in the comments as well. And hit that like button right down below if you are enjoying this conversation on Jimmy's birthday.
It's my what? See, here's the thing. The one combination that we don't have on this planet, and we've got combinations of everything. You know what we don't have? Flying monkeys.
Ramen and boba. Oh.
Yeah. Boba. Oh, no. But you know what I did have the other day? It was really good.
Ramen.
I had sashimi ice cream. Yes.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. Tuna. Red tuna ice cream. Yeah. Amazing.
You know, you do you, buddy. You do you.
Amazing. Well, you have your boba what? Boba ramen?
Boba ramen that was invented by the Vietnamese not too long ago. And
I'm sure it was. Really big straws.
Gross.
Yeah,
okay,
really big straws.
Moving on.
No, but staying with this. Hold on, Cristina. I was going somewhere. What's the one combination that we don't have on this planet? What's the one wish?
Monkeys.
Is humans with wings. That never evolved. We've always wanted to fly, looking at birds and everything else. I don't know how many humans got seriously injured or died jumping off buildings trying to flap wings, right?
Nikola Tesla tried that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's many. Oh, I thought about it. Now, when you watch those bodysuits jumping off a cliff with the bodysuit and I was watching them fly over Los Angeles once. It was pretty incredible. How simple of a technology that is to put on those wingsuits. Anyway, so put that part into the imagination, right? That's what we would love to see because it's what we want to be. And now ET or an ultra-terrestrial would lock onto that and show us what we've always wanted to see and put that in front of us and let that affect us. A flying human, right? That would be the ultimate vision, the ultimate shakeup of the head is a flying human. It would be the hardest thing for people to accept, right? What did you see? You could go anywhere else, Wolfman, Ghost, E.T., but a flying human, a Mothman, that is just a big part of fantasy and everything else because we all dream about it. So could it be? And that's why the creation of it with so many others and started to see it because it was created in front of them. And that's what everybody wanted to see. And this is what John Keel proposes and lays it straight out there that this is quite possibly the answer to all of this because There were too many witnesses, too many things were seen, too many things happened. And then you have the collapse of the bridge immediately after that. That all of this is tied together. And the simplest way to figure out what is going on is that Mothman was created by ultra terrestrials as an interdimensional beings for humans to witness in Point Pleasant. It's a fascinating concept.
And there's something else to add to this, talking about the Men in Black, Ingrid Cold, and something else, because there was a movie, really a documentary in 2002 called The Search for Mothman, and it was directed by David Grabius. Grabius? How do you say it, Jimmy? I feel like you know this person.
I don't know. No, I don't.
Okay, well, either way, this is something worth mentioning. He goes back to Point Pleasant and he wants to talk to the witnesses, those that have had their very own unique encounters with Mothman. Almost none of the witnesses wanted to speak with him and be in his documentary, even though these same witnesses spoke to John Keel and allowed him to place their names in his book, Mothman Prophecies. But then 2001 rolls around because it takes, anywhere from 8 months to 12 months to make a documentary. 2001 rolls around and David is looking for these witnesses, trying to find them, get them on camera to share their experiences. And they did not want to. They were like actually very closed and they said it's nobody's business. No one needs to know about this. Why am I bringing this up? During the same time of the Mothman sightings in 66 and 67, there were alleged encounters with the Men in Black. And if you know anything about the Men in Black, they are there to silence you. They're using all the fear tactics to say you will not share anything you know about UFOs. You're not going to share your encounter, your experience. And in this case, you're not going to mention anything about Mothman. Were those witnesses, such as the couple, for instance, that we had mentioned a little bit earlier, probably the most famous witness testimony when it comes to Mothman, were they approached by the Men in Black to be silenced? So much so that they were so terrified to be in the 2002 documentary Search for the Mothman. That's the next thing we have to bring up.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It is.
The idea behind the Men in Black, again, and women in black. I let's be correct here. The people in black, right? I don't know how do that. All of this Point Pleasant, Cristina. When you really think about this, and John Keel expresses it very elegantly. Point Pleasant had everything going on at the same time. So we have to figure out why. What is the reason and why is this going on? Because they got a taste of everything of the supernatural, of the paranormal, every great conspiracy, right? Just everything happened all at the same time. Visitations from beings from another planet, to cryptozoology and a new creature being sighted, UFOs and ghosts, and everything happened with the Men in Black all at the same time in Point Pleasant. So yeah, it's fascinating to me. What was the reason behind it? And then if the Men in Black roll in, are the Men in Black and Women in Black, are they silencing the town? Are they observing reactions? Are they getting a gauge of what is going on? The other part of it is, okay, and you alluded to this, but I'll say it. I'll go out loud. Let's say there is actual UFO landings and contact happening with ET. What's the cover up? What would you do? Do the Men in Black come in and then they want to find out if somebody made the connection to Mothman, or is Mothman created to cover up the UFO side? Or let's flip that over. Are the UFO sightings there as a cover up by the Men in Black for Mothman? All of these things have to be considered. right? We've heard so many cases of the men in black, Christina, over the years, where you have a UFO sighting, it goes down, people see it, they go public with it. Men in black roll into town, and then suddenly, a week later, 2 weeks later, the same eyewitnesses to the UFO sighting suddenly have an abduction experience. Now, is that abduction experience created to cover up the UFO? And why would it do that? Why would it cover it up? Because now the eyewitness, the experiencer, is now crazy, right? So if you are seeing flying humanoids, right, flying monkeys in Point Pleasant, you are nuts. You've got to cover up the UFO aspect to this. You see, or flip it over the other way. Each one fits, and I just find that very, very curious. And John Keel talks about this very, very directly. And the reason why he didn't have all the answers either. All right, his point was, I was in town for a year. I talked to everybody. I know what I experienced. I know what I saw. I know how the witnesses have handled this. There was so much going on. And the only way I can deal with this is backing away from the extraterrestrial hypothesis, the nuts and bolts situation here, and move this over to an ultra terrestrial, interdimensional experience.
That's a really good way to put it. And I like all of the theories that you're going with this. Is one covering up the other? The UFOs, the Mothman, the Men in Black. These we could even, it's probably been classified as mass hysteria by these witnesses seeing these strange things in the sky. Are they a cover up for one of the same? And Keel didn't have the answers, even though he was the man to do the most research on Mothman during the time of the sightings. But decades later, we're still contemplating these possibilities because we don't know. And before we continue, Electro, thank you so much for the $2.99 super sticker. And Hides, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. It says, if you visit Point Pleasant, give yourself at least 2 days to take it all in. Ask for Wamsley, Jeff Wamsley. All right, I will if I go. And I'll be taking everyone on the ride with me if I were to go to Point Pleasant.
When was the last time you saw the movie? Before we wrap the show, when was the last time you saw the movie with Richard Gere?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, you've got to watch it. Okay, so here's my take on the film. I saw it when it first came out, and I fell asleep. Okay, in the film, saw it in the theater or whatever. Fell asleep. Second time I watched, because the movie is telling a story. All right, and it's not loud. It's not action packed. It's not. No, it is John Keel's journey through his point of view. And I remember the first time I made it through to the end. This is a great movie. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of freaked out right now. And then I watched it again, and I watched it again. The movie is excellent. And I almost wrote it off because I never finished it the first couple of times that I tried to watch it. Now when I watch, I'm glued to it. I'm glued. It's an amazing movie. It's really well made. And I'm going to say the creep factor there, because you're dealing with the unknown. You're dealing with something that, quite possibly, I don't want to say, I'm going to say spiritual. There's that leaning on it, where you're dealing with some type of supernatural power. Is there a force going on here that always freaks me out? And the way that it's presented in the movie is how you would probably deal with it in real life, because you don't have the answers. You don't know really what you're going for. The phenomena is continuing to happen. So yeah, the movie is really, 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 really good. And Richard Gere, I got to say, man, does a great job. It's a good movie, and it's a great screenplay. And I think it presents the entire story really, really well. It's really good. You need to watch it.
In those instances, if you were to encounter something so bizarre, you don't have time to take out your phone and take a picture, I want to get those glasses like you have that record and take pictures for you. That's what I want. It'd be so cool to go out into the field and just not have to worry about taking out the phone, trying to find the camera, and then click. It takes too long. Glasses, bam. Genius.
Those glasses are in a drawer somewhere. I never used them. Never did. They're in a box. Yeah, crazy, huh? I don't even know if they work.
Collecting dust.
What were they called? I
think they're Ray-Bans.
Ray-Ban, yeah.
Right?
Facebook glasses or something. Google glasses. I can't remember.
I'm not the person to
I don't
ask,
even know where they
but I
are.
want a pair.
Yeah, I don't even know where they are. But there is something going on. Oh, and that's what I really love about this subject is I like getting freaked out. I love getting scared. A couple of nights ago, I just enjoy this so much. I got up early in the morning, and it was probably about 5 o'clock. It was still dark outside. Anyway, I got up 5:30. House is dark, and I hear a thump, loud, come from the front of my house, and it was loud. And I jumped, and then I smiled and went, whatever. Right? And I walked over, went across, and I looked out the front. You know what it was? The garbage truck. All right? It was the garbage truck dropping off Now, Cristina, went ghost. Something's moving in my house, right? And I went right there, but I was okay with that. I was okay with it being a ghost. I just wanted to walk in the other room to see what the ghost had knocked over, right? And that's what I really loved. I know that the phenomena is real. I was more than disappointed when I looked out the window and saw the garbage truck. I was like, oh, man. That's why I love this subject. I know that the phenomena is real. We just need to get behind all of this. You know what? We have the reality in front of us. We know that these situations happen, whether it's Mothman or UFOs or Bigfoot, ghost, whatever it may be, right? Time travel. We know that all of this stuff is happening, but we have to get behind that and to the cause and to the why. It's my journey, and I'm going to figure it out one day. I hope that I'm happy with the answers. I hope it's not mundane.
Oh, yeah. I feel you on that one.
Yeah, I hope it's not mundane. The ghosts are real, but this is what's causing it. What? Captain Crunch causes ghosts? You know, I don't want that. I want something else. I want something, you know what I mean? I don't want it to be a mundane answer. You know, ET is real. Yes, they are visiting us. But we are ET, and we they just never told us, and we're part of that. So this has been going on for a long time, and it's really not that big of a deal. You know, take the mystery out of it, take the mystique out of the ET thing. That would ruin it for me. It would ruin it. I don't want to be ruined. So I'm going to get to the end of this, and hopefully I'll get to some answers. Well, I'm going to roll out of here. Cristina, another great show. Fantastic. I'm going to, before you ask me who's on the show tonight, it's me. I'm on the show, and I'm just going to hang out with the Fadernauts and celebrate my birthday. That's what I'm going to do.
Rock on. Jimmy, thank you so much for doing this show with me on your birthday, but also doing it every Thursday with me.
You're the best. Thank you, Cristina. Bye, everyone.
Another great show. If you enjoyed the show, hit that like button right down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, as I do several shows right here every single week. And if you want to speak with other like-minded people, share your experiences, your thoughts, your ideas on the strange and the mysterious, come to my Discord server with almost 4,000 other members. I know one of my amazing mods will place that link in the description box below. It's also on screen right here. Just type in Strange Paradigms on Discord, and that is also a very speedy way to do it. That is it for today. I will see you for Strange News on Monday. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies. enjoy the strange and the mysterious, UFOs, the paranormal, and cryptids, this channel is for you. So make sure to subscribe, as I do 3 videos right here every single week, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss any of the bonus content I post right here.